many more children have died on our streets, Prime Minister? How many more children? How many more children, Prime Minister? Are we going to do something?
Time to change, Starmer.
Come on, needed. How many more children? Is it mine next?
Are you going to stand up for our children? Act.
Bye-bye. Got your photos, off you go. Make a real change, Prime Minister.
Get something.
Make a real change! Get our children! Go away!
I've just found out my friend's 9-year-old daughter was killed.
You're not wanted!
Scumbag! The person I've held as a child and
Who said it was for Who was it?
Keir Starmer just experienced an uncomfortable moment, met with boos and public embarrassment from a furious crowd. His speech was intended to win support, but it had the opposite effect, igniting outrage instead. So, what did he say that turned applause into backlash? Let's take a closer look.
While I understand calls for a ceasefire at this stage, I do not believe that it is the correct position now, for two reasons. One, because a ceasefire always freezes any conflict in the state where it currently lies. And as we speak, that would leave Hamas with the infrastructure and the capability to carry out the sort of attack we saw on October the 7th. Attacks that are still ongoing.
Keir Starmer, once the shining star of Labour, now finds those glory days fading into the past. It's like watching a star player struggle to regain their form. Arriving in Southport, he likely expected a warm reception. After all, he's the Labour leader. But what he got was a harsh dose of reality. The moment he started speaking, the mood changed. The energy in the room vanished as people shifted uncomfortably, exchanging glances that silently asked, "Is this really happening?" The response was unmistakable. Disbelief, disappointment, and mounting frustration rippled through the crowd.
Sky News has, for the first time, uncovered and mapped the networks on Telegram, the encrypted messaging app where the flames were fanned and the riots were organised. We've been working with Pros, an open-source intelligence startup which has a deep penetration of far-right and conspiracist networks on Telegram, to find out who is behind the messaging.
One interesting thing we can see here, especially considering this is the first day, is that the source of most of the information that people are talking about on Telegram isn't British, English language communities.
The most widely shared content on Telegram during the initial
This wasn't Southport's first Labour event. When Jeremy Corbyn took the stage, the crowd was captivated by his every word. With Starmer, it felt more like watching a comedian struggle through a set. Every line landed with an awkward silence. Instead of applause, the audience seemed indifferent. Even the Labour MPs in attendance looked like they wanted to disappear.
Sorry to labour this point, but I think it's important. All summer we were repeatedly told that the Stockport attack was not terror-related, wasn't being treated as terror-related. That wasn't true. Because in October, this monster was charged with a terror offence. Now, information was put into the public domain then that didn't collapse the trial. It didn't jeopardise justice. It was just months later. Now, you say you knew about the ricin and the Al-Qaeda bomb manual, and it was known to the authorities. Did you know about that personally? At the same time, the public, the press, and you and the police were saying this is not terror-related, because I think that's the nub of the issue, and that's what's upset people. You say you couldn't speak out publicly, that you couldn't do that, but didn't the public have a right to know, not least the neighbours?
One MP practically buried himself in his notepad, while another clung to her phone like a lifeline. They didn't need to speak. Their expressions said everything. This was a train wreck. So what did Starmer say that turned the crowd against him? He dived into his economic policies, convinced he was delivering a masterclass. To the crowd, he might as well have been speaking a foreign language. The disconnect was glaring. Conviction gave way to confusion, and their faces made it clear.
With a roundup of the developments today in the case of the Southport incident that saw 3 little girls stabbed to death at a Taylor Swift-themed dance class. The suspect in that case is 18-year-old Axel Rudakubana. Today, police announced that he was facing 2 new charges.
The 2 further offences relate to evidence obtained by Merseyside police during searches of Axel Rudakubana's home address as part of a lengthy and complex investigation which has been ongoing since the 29th of July. The additional charges are the production of a biological toxin, namely ricin, contrary to Section 1 of the Biological Weapons Act 1974, and possession of information, namely a PDF file entitled Military Studies in the Jihad Against the Tyrants, the Al-Qaeda Training Manual, likely to be useful to a person committing or preparing to commit an act of terrorism.
OK.
And then it happened. The first loud boo. It was like a dam breaking, cutting straight through Starmer's attempt to sell his economic vision. A voice from the back let out a sharp, unmistakable boo, as if speaking for the entire room. From that moment, the floodgates opened. Every sentence was met with groans and more boos until people started getting up and walking out.
Cooper has piped up. She said, these additional charges will undoubtedly be distressing for people in Southport. Excuse me. The most important thing is to get justice for BB, Alice and Elsie and their heartbroken families and all those affected by the attack. And nobody should put that at risk. The police and prosecutors have an important job to do in their investigation, pursuing every avenue and taking the action they need to ahead of the trial. We must support them and ensure that everything possible is done to deliver justice. Well, something people might find quite interesting is that Prime Minister Keir Starmer hasn't yet commented on any of this. Not personally, anyway. But a Number 10 spokeswoman...
The atmosphere quickly shifted from unease to outright hostility. Disappointment hung in the air, but the real standout was Starmer's expression. Genuinely stunned, as if the thought of the crowd turning on him had never crossed his mind. Let's be real. He brought this on himself. It's as if he forgot the golden rule of politics, know your audience. In Southport, he completely missed the mark. From start to finish, the event was a disaster. The kind of moment that makes you question how someone can climb so high in politics, only to stumble so badly. But this goes beyond just one bad speech. Remember when Starmer was all in on a second referendum? Turns out, that was just a phase. In 2016, he championed the Remain cause as if it were his life's mission, insisting on a public vote for the final Brexit deal. But then he abruptly switched gears, telling the crowd that Labour needed to move on from Brexit, and they weren't buying it. The tension in the room was on the verge of boiling over. He may be trying to court Brexit voters, but in the process, he's pushing away his own base. Pro-Remain Labour supporters feel abandoned, like Starmer just pulled the rug out from under them.
The events today are just truly awful, and I know the whole country is deeply shocked at what they've seen and what they've heard. And I know I speak for everybody in the whole country in saying our thoughts and condolences with the victims, their families, their friends and the wider community. And it's almost impossible to imagine the grief that they're going through and the trauma that they're going through.
People want answers, and during his Southport speech, Starmer was interrupted 5 times while discussing Brexit. This wasn't just pushback, it was an outright rebellion, and each time the shock on his face spoke volumes. He truly couldn't understand why his own supporters were turning on him. But this isn't just about Starmer. Labour as a whole is quietly stepping away from its pro-Remain past.
I want to pay tribute to Jeremy Corbyn, who's a friend as well as a colleague.
You wouldn't call Jeremy Corbyn a friend?
No. We have to make the case for freedom of movement. We don't want open borders. Freedom of movement has gone and it's not coming back.
Cutting off power, cutting off water, Sakir?
Well, I think that Israel does have that right. I was not saying that Israel had the right to cut off water, food, fuel or medicine. Wounded by the media, the sun in this city, a hurt for this city. And I certainly won't be giving any interviews to The Sun during the course of this campaign.
Did you write an article for some newspaper the other day Surely that's not going to gain you any support across the Northwest.
Would you write for them again, Sir Keir?
I would do, yeah.
Can you guarantee that under your leadership, the 2019 Labour commitments to nationalise water, energy, rail, the Royal Mail...
Supporters aren't taking it lightly. Labour members are ripping into Starmer and party leadership across social media. And this isn't just online chatter. It could have serious electoral consequences.
I don't like the state being able to kill us, which is why I oppose so-called assisted dying as well. But cases like this test me, because he is obviously evil, and what he did to those girls is beyond grotesque. And I can only imagine their suffering. Obviously, I have cried. I would expect every decent person hearing some of the details to be in tears. It is monstrous evil what has happened, and Starmer simply, he's just doing that thing where he just follows procedure and he follows what he thinks the rules say, and that's not human. That's what a robot does.
And we have AI for that if we...
Yeah, exactly. We replace...
He is like a robot, but so is his Chancellor. She actually looks like Tweaky from Buck Rogers. I don't know where...
I do remember, yes, yeah.
OK, you Buck. But look, on a, you know, obviously this is a very serious case. Why could he not have trialled...
Labour's once loyal pro-Brexit strongholds are slipping away. And who can blame them? If you're a committed Brexit supporter, why stick with a party that's now brushing off one of the biggest political battles of the decade? But it gets worse. Just when it seemed Starmer couldn't dig himself a deeper hole, he did. This time by praising Donald Trump. Yes, the same Trump that Labour has spent years condemning. It's as if Starmer is attempting to rewrite Labour's entire foreign policy overnight. But why? What's he really hoping to gain from this?
He should become more like the MAGA party.
I think there are a lot of parallels that we should draw from the MAGA movement when it comes to UK Conservatives. For too many years, we were, a centrist, vanilla puddle in the Conservative Party. We oversaw record immigration, we oversaw high taxation, and it was on our watch that children were subjected to irreversible gender surgical interventions. That all happened on our watch. We were not Conservatives. The MAGA movement is authentically conservative. It's about faith, it's about flag, and it's about family. And those abiding values are what people are crying out for in the UK as well as in the US.
And what's your advice to Keir Starmer as he engages with the new Trump presidency?
Listen, my advice to Keir Starmer is to stop being an idiot, because, Keir Starmer and half of the cabinet voted against President Trump's state visit last time round. We've got so many of members of the cabinet, David Landry notably, having carried out vitriolic and ridiculous personal attacks on Donald Trump. They're all now desperately trying to backtrack, and they're all desperately trying to suck up to President Trump. You know, at best, they're going to be irrelevant. But at worst, they have done great harm to the UK's national interest. So they've got to grow up, stop playing petty student politics, and actually stand up for the UK, get a free trade agreement, work on ensuring our military and security agreements are robust.
Starmer takes a call from Trump, and rather than keeping it professional or holding him accountable like past Labour leaders, he applauds Trump's role in Gaza. Yes, the same Trump that Labour and Starmer himself once criticised as a catastrophe for international relations. Now, Starmer is presenting himself as a peacemaker. Did he really think this would make him look like a diplomatic mastermind? If anything, it's had the exact opposite effect.
Brown is opposed to this. The Archbishop of Canterbury, Angela Rayner, calls it obscene. Your colleague Jonathan Ashworth calls it heinous. Nigel Farage is ahead of this, of course. He would say that he would actually scrap the two-child benefit. Why are you behind Nigel Farage on this? I think
Nigel Farage accepts that he hasn't really funded any of his manifesto, and that's fine. If you don't fund your manifesto, you just say you can have anything you like or anything you think is important. We have taken the careful approach, saying every single thing that we are putting in a manifesto is fully costed and fully funded, and we're going to say before the election the things that we can't afford to do because of the damage to our economy. This is a tough one. I know how strongly Gordon Brown feels about it, and I know why he feels strongly about it. But I think one of the problems in politics is that before an election, people say, I'm going to do A, B and...
Labour supporters are outraged, convinced he's abandoned the party's core values. Left-wing MPs aren't just displeased. They're furious, accusing him of throwing Labour's traditional foreign policy out the window. This isn't just a minor misstep, it's a full-blown reversal of how past Labour leaders dealt with Trump.
This is your favorite president here. I recently spoke to your Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. Two-tier Keir, I think you call him. He's been getting some, how do you say, oral assistance. Guy can't talk properly, speaks a bit funny, like he's still got a butt plug in. Very strange. But he's a big fan of Trump, I hear. So, if two-tier Keir likes it in the rear, that's fine by me. I hope Keir Starmer follows my Trump blueprint and you can...
Jeremy Corbyn refused to attend a state banquet with Trump. Sadiq Khan openly condemned his Muslim ban. Even Tony Blair, despite his controversies, handled Trump with more caution. But Starmer, he's practically rolling out the red carpet. This isn't just a bad look. It's a move that could seriously fracture Labour's relationship with progressive voters. Labour's long positioned itself as the party that stands against figures like Trump. Yet now, the very people who once trusted them feel abandoned.
Was Donald Trump basically saying, yes, he's a liberal, but that's his philosophy. We're very different, but he's a good man and, you know, a lot of regard for him. Did that surprise you? Because your lot seem to spend a lot of time projecting the image that Trump is on the side of Farage.
Well, I think first thing to say is obviously it makes a change from Labour, who basically sent a whole load of people over to root for the Democrats. And then David Lammy and various other people have been extremely rude about Donald Trump in the past. So it's good to see there's a bit of rapprochement. Do we take it seriously, Michelle? Probably not. I would describe it as verbal baby food, which is necessary in global politics. Do I think Donald Trump and Keir Starmer are cut out to get on well? Very definitely not. And I'm sure that they'll be finding lots of things to disagree over in the future, not least the Chagos Islands, probably trade, lots of other issues.
Starmer, once hailed as Labour's saviour, is now staring down a full-blown mutiny. And it's not just the left turning on him, centrists are abandoning him too. MPs are sharpening their knives, and whispers of a leadership challenge are already making the rounds. Meanwhile, the polls are plummeting. Labour's approval rating is in freefall, and even in its traditional strongholds, voters are slipping away. This isn't just a policy crisis, it's a full-blown leadership meltdown. Unless Starmer pulls off a miracle, Labour could be barrelling toward an electoral disaster so severe that Southport will feel like just the opening act. The real question now, can Labour bounce back? Or will it crumble under the weight of Starmer's missteps?
So I want to be clear at the outset, against the backdrop of these dangerous times, the idea that we must choose between our allies, that somehow we're with either America or Europe, is plain wrong. I reject it utterly. Attlee did not choose between allies.
Please like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this.